Welcome to the Guilty Party.
Welcome to the Guilty Party podcast, co-hosted by Micah Labrosse and Patrick Madsen. We are extremely excited to bring you today's episode. So without further ado, welcome to the Guilty Party. You're one of us now. Let's go and start this off. I know that the main thing that you and I definitely want to talk about first is George Floyd. And I guarantee that everyone, it doesn't matter even if you're living under a rock, you've bound to heard how George Floyd was killed on May 25th. He was at a convenience store. I don't know exactly the details of what led to his arrest, but a group of cops showed up, and one of them, and here's the thing that people don't realize is George Floyd was not a small guy. I think he was like 6'5", something like that. He worked as a bouncer at a bunch of places.
He's a big dude.
Yeah, he's a big guy. And he got arrested. He was put in handcuffs. And from what I understand, he wasn't like fighting back. He wasn't mouthing off. He was probably a little worried, but that's from from what the video has shown and what people have said, the bystanders. And then for whatever reason, and I still cannot find the exact truth or the reason behind it, he ends up on the ground. He might have tripped, or maybe someone tripped him. I don't know what the case was. And then this white officer basically had his leg on top of George's neck and was pressing pretty much, I'm sure, his entire weight. And you hear George, on the video saying, "I can't breathe." He keeps saying that. He's calling for his mom, a bunch of other things. And we now know today, based on the independent, report, that he died from asphyxiation. Beforehand, everyone... The official report, and this is where it might go in the tin hat rabbit hole, that he had, I think, a coronary heart disease where the loss of oxygen from his neck wasn't the thing that killed him, but it was something that definitely accelerated, all the symptoms that would lead to death with that kind of disease. But we now know he died from being choked to death. And so, go ahead.
Once again, it's like, so not to cut you off or anything. Yeah. So once again, it's like, who do we trust as people? Because you got TMZ reporting today that he died of fentanyl. Fentanyl was the complication. And then you got, KHOU in Houston saying that it was asphyxiation with, in addition to fentanyl and heart disease and stuff. And then you have, the independent.com or insider.com rather, saying that it was complete asphyxiation. So it's like, with this, it's like, okay, come on. We've all seen the video. We've all seen, all the cops that were involved. And mind you, it wasn't just a white guy. It was also a black guy that just wasn't black enough for the public to care. And it was also an Asian, and it was also another whatever other, so it wasn't just a white guy, but this is the news's favorite thing to say. So let's flash back to maybe a little over or under a year ago to the Covington kids, right? All the mainstream media posts up this kid wearing a MAGA hat in the face of this Native American person, and they run rampant with it. Well, flash forward, it didn't go down like that. It's just how it's presented by mainstream media. Mainstream media takes these things and they glorify them without giving all the facts, and then you have all these sub-articles coming out, and they're trying to say this happened, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to post this article up on social media so people are aware. And then it's like, well, I'm posting this other article that literally debunks your article, so now it's a war of articles, and the integrity of journalism is so far down the shithole. It's so bad during this. Mind you, we had a pandemic right before all this happened, and were we getting proper information with that? No, we weren't. And so flash forward now to George Floyd dying, and we get presented that it was a white cop that killed him with his knee on his back. Well, there's a video to prove it. That cop had him down there for, I think, over 7 minutes. He's sitting there begging for his mom. It is the saddest thing you ever see. I'm just as pissed about that. But let's be fair. that there was other cops around him that could have saved his life, that could have intervened in there. And what this comes down to is poor training and overglorification from the media, and not giving you all the facts and leaving you to do what? Figure out shit on your own. So now you got to take to the streets and burn down stuff because you don't have answers and you see no progress happening.
Well,
so it's
yeah,
like
there's definitely a lot of
between.
that, and there's also you have to take certain things at face value before you just start going into the details of why it happened. But before it was, I mean, it didn't look good. That's why I think that everything went
Right.
to like a white guy, killed a black guy, which was the case. He also had a history of, not domestic abuse, but just abuse in general, like disciplinary action, all that kind of stuff. He's had that for the last 20 years. Same thing with that Asian guy. And no one did anything. Now, did he maybe have some tendencies that he assumed because, George was black, he assumed XYZ? I think it could be the case. I think it could be. I'm not saying that's 100% it, but that's what I think it is. But at the same time, like you said, you had all those officers of different color that just stood around and did nothing. So here's my biggest thing. I think that if people actually in the government and the higher ups, if they actually want to make a change, they need to do a whole rehaul on our justice system, because that thing is so screwed up. And you've got, here's the thing, that there's a lot of issues like this. This is not an isolated incident. This happens all over the country, to, different, races and, backgrounds and stuff like that. It's to the point now where it was supposed to be like when you and I were kids that we could trust a cop if, something was going down. Now, you and I are adults. I don't know about you, but every time I go down the street and I pass a cop, I'm thinking, am I doing anything slightly wrong? Or do I just drive funny or whatever it is that's going to cause this guy to just, pull me out and do something if he had a bad day or whatever it is? Like, there's not that much training that goes into becoming a cop. And if you guys, or if any of you guys are cops and think differently, please, send us a comment or an email. Let's talk. I want to have a discussion. But, I was reading a few days ago that it takes less time to become a police officer than it does to get your license to cut hair. How crazy is that?
Ooh.
I mean,
Well, so think about it, right? You got people. These are people. These aren't robots that are out there, and that's why they're called the 5-0s. That's literally the ranking system above civilians, right? So you have people with an enormous amount of power over the common civilian. So now you come up to them and they have to adhere to everything you're saying. And if they grab a hold of you and you move and you try to get out of that hold that they have you, and now you're resisting and you're even more screwed, right? So they have this immaculate amount of power over just a regular person. So now this person walks up to George Floyd, and if you've seen the pre-death video, he gets yanked out of his car by two other cops. So before the white cop was even on the scene, he's getting yanked out and he's apprehended, and they're putting him up against the wall, and then they walk him down the street that later, was the location of his death.
Yeah.
And so you have four cops there, that one of those cops, just one of them, have the tremendous amount of power over this civilian, that anything they say goes, and if you start to move or plead your case, it only worsens you. That's why what you do or say will be held against you in court, the Miranda rights and stuff. And so these guys come up to him, and he's a bigger dude, and this is where it's proof of lack of training. I didn't know about the time it took to become a cop as opposed to get your barber's license and stuff. It doesn't surprise me when you see all of these crazy amounts of videos. And this George Floyd video is not by any means the only one that's ever surfaced. How long have we been watching this, right? And so you got four cops that come up to this guy, and then they throw him down. Now, obviously, I haven't seen a video of him getting thrown down, but when the video picks up of that cop with his knee on his neck, he's already down. So my assumption is that he was taken down somehow. And that's the part we don't know. But still,
Dude,
so this
I hate to
person
cut you off.
is
Have you heard
pleading for
about that? The trap singer.
No, you're good.
Who posted a tweet about. So I forget his name, but this dude is a piece of trash. Anyway, he's the singer of Trapped, and he posts a tweet about like George Floyd probably resisted arrest, and he brought it on himself, and all this crazy stuff. So it's still sickening to me that people like that, whether he was doing it for a PR move or whatever it is, that they have that kind of sentiment, that they're always going to take the cop side. And here's another thing that bothers me. I know that there are a lot of great cops out there, and I do have someone that I grew up with that he's a great dude and everything like that, but you have so many of these bad cops that no one speaks up about. I mean, how many movies and shows have you seen, and even real life situations where a cop did something and no one said something because you're not supposed to snitch out your fellow guy in blue? Like, what does that say? Like, how is that going to reinstate trust in us that there are a lot of good cops? It doesn't help it, even if, every once in a while someone speaks up. If you guys are continually, letting stuff like this happen. I mean, this even happened in the case. I'm not so much a cop, but I'm gonna truly butcher his name. But the young man that died in Georgia, who was gunned down by those two guys. One of the older guy.
Arbery is his last name.
So the older guy, he was a former district attorney or something like that, or maybe he was a current one. And that situation happened, and it didn't even hit like really mainstream news until 2 weeks later. And the guy was still not under arrest or even detained or anything. Well, it was
almost like it was almost like the appetizer to this crazy viral entree that we have now, right? And so going off of what you're saying is, so now let's play both sides here, right? So cops, once again, humans. And you got to think about their position. They're constantly stressed out. They're constantly talking to people, and negative energy is always being spread because I have a problem with authority. You're pulling me over, sir. I was only going 6 over. You're a dick. You handed me this ticket. Or they show up to constant beehives. So if you were the person that was called to save somebody from an incident, you don't know if that person, when they called you, was being truthful. You're just told to report on scene in order to facilitate or save this person from his situation. So you're constantly showing up to beehives. You're constantly interviewing or investigating people that are always lying to you. And so you're on edge, and you can't just walk away because you put your life on the line to protect and serve. So you're the end-all, be-all to this issue that is going on that you are now that you have now shown up to. So they're constantly in stress, but this is where training comes in. So,
but they're not trained.
The white
they're not
cop
trained enough.
And
I think we both can agree on that.
That's what I'm saying. Is so. Yeah. I mean, and then there's cops that are, right, and so I mean. This is exactly what happens. Again, we're talking about humans. So a human puts on the badge, and there's good people out there that put on the badge, then they want to protect and serve. And then there's assholes that put on this badge, and they just want the power, and they're addicted to the power, and they're gonna beat you when you resist or something. I just watched another video in New York, and this was obviously before the George Floyd murder, and it's in New York City, and it's this teenage black kid, and he is being suppressed by these two huge, way bigger than him, officers, and he's resisting. And so what do the two cops do? Well, one of them takes out his gun while he's already on top of him and pops this kid twice, dead.
What?
Right now, where these guys Wow. Yeah. I'll send you this video. It's very awful, dude. There's been so many of these videos resurfacing because people don't want you to forget these other people, because George is getting, all of this attention, but they're like, don't forget about this person. Don't forget about the Georgia killing right before this. Don't forget about what happened here, what happened here.
Of how I feel like that mainstream news, they just pick one person, and that's what uproars, a bunch of things. But we'll get to that later.
Well, so here's my point about that. My point is this cop takes out his gun, shoots this teenager kid dead. Right there. And all he was doing was, he was resisting. Well, dude, you're two cops. Mind you, you're way bigger than him to start. Now you're a cop, and you're supposed to have training, and that's your resort. Now this is the question no one asks and no one knows. Were these cops white? Absolutely not. They were both Hispanic. And they shot this dude dead right there. But does he get coverage like this? No, because the media doesn't like to glorify what's called minority versus minority violence. They love it when it's a white dude doing it to a minority person, right? And I'm not calling you, I don't even like using that word. I'm not calling anybody of other ethnicities minorities. I think that's a shitty term because we're all equal. And but they love airing that story. So when they got their hands on this one, blew it up, rightfully so, but also right before this was the Georgia killing. So now this is a big sandwich of bullshit, but people are so pissed off because, mind you, once again, there's a pandemic going on. And for the past 2, if not 3 months, people have been inside their homes, angry already. And then they see this, and it was literally the straw that broke the camel's back. And now they're out. And is social distancing is... Who gives a fuck about the coronavirus now, right? I mean, I haven't heard anybody speak about it. There's people out there burning down the world right now. And
so before we get to the...
hey, I thought there was a...
No, I was going to say, before we get to the looting part, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that I know we want to talk about. A few things that I think we should kind of address is like how everyone has responded to this, because you've got everyone from different races, chiming in. You've got, conspiracies that are starting to pop up now from, all the looting and how that's escalated.
What are the conspiracies? What are the conspiracies? I'm so curious.
Okay, so a lot of it is they're saying that people that are causing the actual violence and the stirring up, to get everyone pissed off, are from people out of state. Some of them they're saying that Antifa is, the one going to all these states and cities. There was something over here in the Dallas or DFW area that there were random shipments of bricks, in scattered places where the protests were supposed to be starting. And someone is saying,
I have seen that.
Again, I don't know how much truth there is to that. I haven't looked too much into it, but and then of course, there is the good old that the government is doing this to incite things, to take things off of the virus. Which, because I was just listening to a podcast today, that I forget the term for it, but it's basically where they use an insider to start things up. They've done this in Russia. The U.S. has actually done this a couple times, or a few times, when they're trying to sting like white supremacists or other things. Again, I don't know the general term for it and all the history behind it, but, that's another conspiracy that's kind of going out there. But one of the things that
go for it. No, I was saying, I can see how most of that people can draw that conclusion, because I have watched these videos of these bricks staged. And do you think, okay, so if you see staged bricks, do you think that people are like, okay, I'm gonna burn this building down, I'm gonna knock these windows out, and then I'm gonna take all the bricks and I'm gonna stack them nice and neat on the sidewalk, because we don't want people to trip over bricks?
They're saying it's beforehand, like these bricks.
That's what I'm saying. So so these bricks are already there, but they're all stacked. I've seen these pictures, and they're all nationwide. I mean, they were even in Dallas. Of course, I'm sure you saw that one. And so you see these staged bricks there, and they're literally ammo for people to riot with. It's like when we were little kids and watching the football game, and mom gave us some wrapped up foil, and so we could throw it at the TV when dad was getting loud.
Yeah,
right? It's like stuff like that. And so now these bricks are staged there. And then I saw a video on actually Trump's Twitter, and it's this guy dressed in all black, white dude, and he's giving money in exchange to black people and pointing at buildings of which ones to go to. And Trump actually tweeted that, and he was like, "We see you," and stuff like that. So, I mean, I can see now how people can draw these conclusions.
Yeah, there's a thing about, and I don't know the details of it, I just heard it earlier today, of there's a AutoZone that apparently either caught on fire or blew up, and apparently someone who had, a black bag dressed in all in black, you could barely see their face, who supposedly wasn't part of the protest, went in earlier that day, and then later that day that place caught on fire. Some of the people at the protest were trying to talk with him to see like who he was with. He was trying to like avoid them and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think that I think
Well, I
there's a
watched
great
another one.
possibility of people trying to incite things just to cause, mayhem. I think there are real assholes like that are out there trying to do that sometimes because all they want to do is watch the
Well,
world burn.
absolutely. Well, yeah, and let's be honest. There's people out there right now that are enjoying the living hell out of this anarchy. There's just natural anarchist people. I used to have friends that when they heard about martial law, they were like, "Oh, that would be so exciting." And I'm like looking at them like, "Why would that be exciting?" It's like, "Oh, because you could just do anything you want." Oh my God, they were like literally mentally getting off about the idea. Not any friends anymore, but I
Yeah.
remember these conversations with them and how excited they were when they were looking in to just martial law. Well, let's talk about martial law for a second because we have riots in the streets. We have a virus that's supposedly killing people out there. Martial law, if this stuff keeps up, is not out of the cards. It's entirely possible that people are being transported in other places to stir up chaos and pandemonium. It's entirely possible that there were staged bricks. And it's entirely possible that the president can call martial law on us, and then we're in the thick of it. I mean, it's either that or we're headed for a civil war. Now, when you say the words civil war, everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're being so extreme. You're being so that would never happen. What is this, 1860 something?" And it's like, well, this is the recipe for it.
Well, they
Racial
think of it in
tension,
the way of
and
like,
you're gonna
hey,
make people
state versus
broke.
state, and I'm like, no, 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 no. When we talk about civil war and this today's day and age, it's gonna be brother against brother. The person across the city. That's what they don't realize. This is not just going to be hey, half of the states are going to go this way and the other states are going to go the other way. It's going to be a lot more personal than you realize.
Well, so think about it, right? A lot of people, when they think Civil War, they think, "Oh, the North versus the South. It's all going to happen all over again." It's like, no. You think people from Minnesota are going to be like, "Let's go fight Texas." No, it's not going to happen like that. It's going to be a civil war, and you're going to have to fear your neighbor now rather than love them, and everyone becomes a threat at that point. So the shots heard around the world. You're going to be this person's coming up to you, and maybe they just want help, but you blast them down because you're like, "I'm not going to let you kill me in this civil war or this just crazy state of tension that we're in." Mind you, masks are still being worn, right? So this was the perfect time for these riots. Oh, masks? Well, we're just practicing social distancing and being good, civilians. But now we can wear these masks. We can go down. We can ruin all these businesses and get away scot-free. How many people went to work today going, "Man, that weekend was lit"? Well, and no pun intended, sorry, but still,
Yeah.
like how many people, right? They were weekend warriors. I mean, you don't see any. You see it in some places, but in San Antonio, we had a huge protest, and it started off peaceful, and then that shit went south quick. And last night, I was watching a bunch of live feeds, taking some notes for our podcast today, and all I saw was down on, I want to say wherever the main Riverwalk entrance are. You got a bunch of, because it's open carry down here, so you can openly carry your firearm. You got a bunch of dudes out there with AR-15s ready to go. And you got the cops with a standoff. I mean, right there, what I tuned into and watched last
so I
night.
understand you correctly. So you're saying that the people with the ARs that were carrying, they were protesting against the cops, or what were they doing exactly?
Actually, they were defending the cops, but if so, now they got more, so basically a private militia. I think these were military dudes because a lot of them had military grade stuff on, and they also had, wearing camouflage and stuff. Right. And I think another dude was wearing an army hat. Anyway, so they're defending the cops. But you think other people don't have guns that are opposed to that side? No way. I mean, it's Texas, bro. We're all strapped down here. Everyone, and plus it's open carry. So I mean, so I tune into this live feed for 2 minutes. In the first 2 minutes, I'm seeing what it's gonna look like. It's like some gangs of New York shit. What it's gonna look like when you got cops right there and they're in their SWAT gear, and you got people out there with ARs, and then you got the opposing side that's just screaming. Energy, negative energy, until the shot heard around the world happens. And when that shit happens, and I'm gonna bring this tweet up. When that happens, martial law gets declared, or the pre-steps to that. Now, what are the pre-steps? Well, I'm going to read you a direct tweet from Donald J. Trump today. And he said he is going to start deploying the National Guard. And if states do not accept that or support that, then he will deploy the U.S. military. That shit right there. That is what we are talking. We are that close to something that has just been folklore and superstition for the longest time. The shit you see in movies, or little sitcoms or shows on Netflix. We are that close to that happening. Now, a lot of people can make the case for rightfully so, because this has been the oppression from African American people. It needs to be brought to justice, and I totally agree with that.
And
but
that's
how
kind of
about
where I wanted to go next, because I wanted to kind of talk about the sentiment that I've been seeing, and I'm sure you've been seeing it as well, when this situation happened. And we definitely started seeing it when the young man died in Georgia, and then more so as soon as George died in up north. And so here's the two sentiments that I've been seeing, and it's been very hard to see anything in the middle. You've got people on one side, mainly saying that no matter what happens, no matter the protest, no matter the riot, no matter the store lootings or anything along those lines, at the end of the day, a black man died because he couldn't breathe. And then you've got people on the other side, which, again, everyone's been saying the same thing of, well, I don't see race, I see everyone the same way. It's fine to protest, but if you start rioting, then you lose credibility and all those things. And that's kind of how I want to address and kind of us talk about like where we are with that, because I see both sides. I see one side where, a lot of the stuff, we have to be honest, if you're in a rough neighborhood, you're more likely to be slightly more cautious around, an African American, in general terms. That's what most people think, I feel like, than they would, just a white guy. Not everyone feels that way. I don't. And the only reason I say that is because, it's only a few streets down where Stop 6 is one of the most roughest neighborhoods in Texas, especially in North Texas. And I grew up going, driving and walking in Lancaster, and there being a lot of rough dudes of both races, and not bothering me. And then the other people who all they want to do is say, well, I don't see race and everything like that. But then it's like, if you don't appreciate the struggles that a lot of people that are African American go through, then what are you actually doing to help with that? It sounds like you're just saying words so that you look good on top, when you post on social media.
Well, yeah, let's be honest. There's a tremendous amount of what's been classified as the white knight or white guilt going around, and I've seen it firsthand on social media and just everywhere, of people trying to justify like themselves, and they're going, I'm not racist, and they gotta post it publicly. I love all black people. Well, it's like, okay, they don't really care about that. And in my personal friends here in San Antonio, and just the dude that I worked out with today at Planet Fitness, who I talked to and didn't want to be publicly named on this podcast, he said in his own words, that shit means nothing. What means something is y'all's support right now. Dude, that hit me like a ton of bricks, and it couldn't be more true. Now, that doesn't mean y'all's support in looting and burning down these local businesses. No, he didn't say that. Y'all's support for their cries, because they're angry and they're sad. And how many times do they got to see videos like this?
Yeah, exactly.
And so you to justify it and go on social media and justify it and just say, I'm not racist and here's why. That means jack shit. What is it, helping you sleep at night? Like, what does that mean? Like, who knows that if you could be lying, for one. And honestly, what is that going to fix? It's not going to fix a thing, because you going down there and supporting them and trying to be there for your neighbor over something. And it's just like the example I brought up before. If there was Asian officers killing Hispanic people, and Hispanic people were protesting, and they saw a bunch of white people show up, wouldn't that make them love their neighbor? Wouldn't that make them feel supported?
Yeah, exactly.
But if now that those Asian officers are killing Hispanic people, and all the white people are doing is saying, well, hey, I'm not racist against Hispanics, here's why. Well, good, cool, great post. But it doesn't do a thing. So, I mean, you trying to be this social justice warrior, or you're trying to be this white knight, it doesn't matter because all they want is your support and they want to see this come to an end. And what it is a dog that's been kicked. And don't get me wrong, I'm not calling black people dogs. I'm saying in a metaphor here, a dog getting kicked so much that is biting back. And like I said, how many times do they have to see these videos? I mean, dude, I have not only the George Floyd one, but I don't have enough toes and fingers to count how many resurfaced videos that have reignited my memory to remember the falling African Americans that have died at the hands of cops, not only white cops, Hispanic cops, and also black cops. But there's a power trip going on in America.
I mean, and I still think that, one, that they need a lot more training and the justice system needs to be rehauled. But two, I still think at the end of the day that they, African American, anyone in a minority is going to have that issue until there is change. I mean, me being a biracial guy, I can think of so many times when, I was with my dad and he got stopped by a cop. And I know that cop probably would have, treated a white guy a lot different than he did my dad. Now, granted, my dad definitely flew out the handle and definitely had his fair share of getting, upset over something stupid that the cop was doing. But it's like, that is a real thing. And one of the things that I feel like when they say stuff like, oh, I don't see race, it means that they were refusing to address and understand that the real issue at hand is it's a real thing. There's a lot of African Americans out there getting unjustly, maybe imprisoned or killed. I mean, we're seeing that a lot more now. People are saying, oh, it hasn't been done in a while. No, you're only now seeing the public stories. If it meant that much to you, you would be looking it up to see like what's going on in my area. Guaranteed, if you spent 5 minutes to research what type of killings, whether it's been by cops or someone else or whatever the color is in your area, bet you'd find some and you'd be super, super surprised. And so something I want.
Yeah. And I think we can all.
No, you go.
Sorry,
I'll
continue. I'm saying I think we can all agree, and hopefully we can all agree that the African American communities have not been given a fair hand from cops. I think we can all agree that.
I think if you don't, you're living under a rock and you just want to put something over your head and you don't care about anything.
And I think, yeah, exactly. And I think you're also refusing to accept the fact because you don't have to deal with that. So you're like, well, not my problem, Yeah.
So.
And so let me ask you a personal question here. So you being what we say Half-African, which is what's your other ethnicity? So you're half African.
My dad is from Africa, so I'm half African, and then but the other half is white. My mom is Caucasian. She's white. She's very, very pale. One of the sweetest women I have ever known in my life. But and here's something, and I don't know if my dad would appreciate or my mom, but my dad definitely experienced his share of prejudice, call it racism, whatever you want to call it, because it's a very strong word that you need to understand the weight before you just throw that around. Both when he came here, both when he, not so much when he was in the military, because I feel like the military beats that crap out. I hope. I'm sure there are still a lot of racist assholes in the military, but that's something else in itself. And, but he definitely experienced that with maybe one or two, people in the family on a certain side because he wasn't a white guy. And that's the kind of issue that he kind of had experienced, early on when he came to America back in the 80s and 90s. Now it's something that it doesn't bother him anymore. He doesn't care. But it's something that because...
Yeah, but he went through it.
Exactly. He went through it. And that's kind of what gives me a better insight to not just say, like, I don't see race, because I do. And you do too. And you're just willing to put your head in the sand because you don't want to acknowledge that, bad things happen to people. And for instance, African Americans. So yeah, I'm a biracial guy. And it is what it is.
Yeah. So when would you say in your upbringing, when would you say the first time or around the first time you were exposed to racism? Not projected on you, or maybe it was, or just you noticed it.
Probably like, as a kid, you see stuff in the news, you ask your parents. I can't really think of a specific incident, but I know that I definitely saw it. Um, and especially my mom, she made sure that she didn't shelter us from bad stuff that happens, because she wanted us to make sure, like, hey, this is why you treat people with dignity and respect, is because you never know what they're going through, you never know their background, and there's a lot of a-holes out there that they will look down on you because of your stature, because of your skin color, and they will refuse to try and think otherwise, because that's the precognition they've had their entire life. That's how their parents taught them. And so, definitely as a kid, I would see stuff on the news. Uh, I mean, maybe it was a cop killing, maybe it was, someone getting beaten for something stupid. Um, yeah, it was just something that I tried to make sure that going forward, I understood, like, hey, this stuff does happen. Maybe it doesn't make me treat anyone differently, but I think you need to appreciate like where someone's background comes from, and know that, hey, it's going to be a part of their life for the rest of their life in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not huge, maybe a very tiny bit. It could be even a memory they had. And I think we're just now starting to open our eyes. I mean, like, what about for you? Like, what was your experience for that?
So, yeah, I'm going to take the floor for a second because I got two instances that I grew up with that at a young age made me really notice it. So, for the listeners out there, anybody that grew up with me, anybody that knows me, you know where I grew up, which I'm not going to name the place because the only reason I wouldn't burn that place down, because I think what's happened in that city is some of the most worst shit that I've seen with my eyes. Not only that, the public schooling system is my parents. My parents live there, so I will leave this name out. But what I noticed at a early age was my sister and I, we grew up and we didn't have racist parents at all, and we grew up in a very racist area. So when now you had to almost pick sides, and I can remember back to like 7th grade, a bunch of what we would call kickers, which were like the country kids, showed up to school and they're all wearing white shirts and cowboy boots and Wranglers and stuff, and we're like, what the heck's going on? And they're just starting shit with black kids the whole day. And that was an early one. Well, now flash forward to my sister's prom. My sister, in a very racist redneck town, she took a black dude to prom, or a black dude took her to prom, and my dad was like, he wasn't against the guy. He met the guy. I forget his name, but he was such a cool dude. And I remember playing basketball with him, and he really took me under his wing, taught me a lot of stuff, taught me how to shoot hoops and how to be a man. I remember having a lot of conversations with him at an early age, and he was such a cool dude. So I was like, yeah, Steph, he's really cool. Like, I'm glad you're going to prom with him. Not being aware of what people were saying on the outside. And my dad, who's a public business figure in this said city, he got shit on a lot for it.
Really?
It caused a lot of turmoil. I had to, and bless my sister's heart. She's been through a lot of things in her life. And this was a major thing that showed her, that, man, people are just plain mean.
Yeah.
And so there would be comments at school. People would do dirty shit to her. And it got really bad. And so now all of a sudden, I'm labeled as a bad kid because, when you go through public schools and you hear people just constantly trashing your sister over anything they can get their hands on, and then they're always resorting to, oh yeah, and she took a black dude to prom, and then she's walking like, I saw my sister cry so many times in the hallways, and just going up to her going, Steph, what is wrong? She wouldn't talk to me. She just bury her face in her books and keep walking because she didn't want anybody to talk to her because she knew she was a target. And so now I'm being branded as a bad kid in this crappy town because I'm fighting a lot of people that were defending my sister, and not appreciating what they're saying and telling them to stop. And then me getting ganged up on a couple times, or me just defending somebody. Yeah. And so the schools didn't help. The schools didn't help at all. And they were persecuting me and putting me away like I was the problem. And I'm like, you're letting this shit go on. And it wasn't until a black principal pulled her aside and took her under his wing and protected her and she still keeps up with that guy today, that shit started to change. So now there's that one instance, and I'm already exposed to this as a kid. Like, what the hell is this? Some of my best friends ever at that school, one of his names is Josh Nieto, and everyone would call him Tiger Woods, you know, because he looked just like him. He's half black, half Asian kid. And dude, he's one of my closest friends to this day. And so we never saw any racial stuff, but he would always pull me to the side and be like, we'd be at a McDonald's after football practice or something. He'd be like, we need to get out of here, Pat. And I was like, why? And he goes, you just trust me, man. Like, he would just feel the tension in there, and then you'd look up and all these white dudes are like looking at him and wondering why I'm hanging out with him and stuff. And I was like, damn, it's like this down here. But you're brought up. You have no choice where you're brought up, because where your parents have you and where you live is where you live. And so now,
just interrupt you for a second.
Go for it.
And that's where I think that based on like the area where you live, you're going to experience things a whole lot different from someone else who lives, 10 towns over, that they experience that, on a daily basis, or maybe a lot more often than you. And then you're like, well, I've never seen it, so it doesn't exist. No, it just means you haven't experienced it. Because like for my instance, like I was homeschooled. Let me just put that out there. So I didn't go to public school. I didn't go to private school. I was homeschooled. So most of the interaction I had, were at friends' parties or hanging out with friends. And most of the people that I hung out with were from Martin High School. And that is a huge biracial, school. It wasn't uncommon for dates and proms. I think one year the prom king was a black guy, and the queen was, this white chick or whatever. So I didn't quite experience it the same way that maybe you had, from a different town, or maybe a different area in Texas. And that's what I think that we both agree on is, based on your upbringing, and your parents, how they treated you, or how they showed you how to, interact with other people, you're going to experience things in a very, very different way. But it doesn't mean that you turn a blind eye or be naive to the real things. Have some situational awareness to things that are going on around you.
Yeah, 100%, man. And so I had some great lessons growing up. My mother, amazing. I mean, the stuff that my sister and mother have went through in their lives is truly inspirational. So at an early age, I'm asking my mom, why doesn't my brother Chris look exactly like me? I'm like, I'm way lighter than him. My brother is half Mexican, and I'm asking these questions at an early age, going, why is Chris darker than me, Mom? And she opens up like, hey, your brother Chris has another father. And I was like, whoa, and so she told me about it. And so you got to picture this. My mom had my brother in 1981. So she was pregnant with my brother in 1980 in Waco, Texas. So in 1980 in Waco, Texas, my mother was 16 years old at the time. And so in 1980 in Texas, my mother is pregnant with what's classified as a minority baby because he's Mexican. So think about that for a second. And the father wasn't around. I don't know what happened there. I really haven't talked to my mom about that specific thing. Like, hey, what was Chris's dad really like? I mean, it's probably too painful of a conversation, and I really haven't talked to her about that. But what I will say is that she had to go through a lot of excruciating things down there with that. People saying stuff. Her father, my papa, was a 32nd degree Mason, and I'm sure he had to hear stuff there. And he was a very well-recognized figure in town. And so when he caught the news, he regretted how he acted. And I think, things got the best of him. And so she had to go through a lot of stuff and didn't really find support in too many places. Yep. And then and then my brother comes around, and my grandparents fall in love with him, and they raise him. My parents move, and they open a deli in 1980 something in Florida, and then they raise. My grandma raises my brother in Waco, Texas, and so they fell in love with him. But I mean, it's just the things that my sister and my mother have had to go through when all they did was essentially love people that weren't their race, and then they had to get the backlash from it. And my sister's still screwed up from these things sometimes, she's not like traumatic from it, but we'll bring it up, and you can tell it feels good for her to talk about it. She had to go through a lot of bullying, and it wasn't just bullying, your natural bullying. It was a little bit of racial bullying, like you're not sticking with your own race type thing. And so all that to say is I was very aware of this shit at a very early age, from talking to my mother and talking to my sister. So what does that mean? What that means is that this underlying racial issue has been here before my mother. Well, obviously with Martin Luther King and all the civil rights movement, and flash forward to present day, from Martin Luther King now to present day to George Floyd. Has the shit changed? No, it just looks a little bit different.
Yeah. No,
that's how I feel about it. It just looks a little different.
It's definitely a real thing. I mean, again, everyone has gone through various degree of upbringing of how they feel on it. And again, like one of my best friends, and probably our friends, our family's best friends growing up, because they were all our same age, were they were African American too. And you know what? Now that I think about it, I'm sure there were some instances when we were hanging out with them and other kids, that there may have been some stuff like that I just wasn't aware of, because, to me, I was just hanging out with one of my buddies, same thing with everyone else. But at the same time, you have to take a stance of, am I going to just believe things for what I think they are? Or am I going to do my due diligence and look around and see what's actually going on? So, I agree with you. Things haven't changed too much. I do think that things progressed a lot better than they were, 10, 20, even 30, 40 years ago. But I still think because, we are not all doing our due diligence to teach our kids better, to be better, to push and do things differently, that we're still going to have stuff like this. I mean, I hope that, with all these riots and protesting, that a lot of things change. I really would hope that they would do a huge overhaul system on the justice system, and understand that there's a big issue when it comes to cops and maybe being trained, that they've just been turning a blind eye for so long. I also hope that, it's not going to be a continued trend of, especially like African American men being, killed through something like a misunderstanding. And so that's just the biggest thing. I really hope that we can all figure out a way that we're actually going to make a difference, and not just post another picture with a caption on social media and say, well, I've done my part, because you didn't do jack shit, man. And that's what bothers me. Especially
exactly.
if you have a large following, if that's all you can do, and you get all those likes and retweets, whatever it is, then you didn't do anything. If anything, you just contributed to the problem. Because now you've got people arguing in the comments. You've got different sides. You're not able to be a mediator. And all you do is just cause more division.
Well, so those people that post that stuff, they truly, because, dude, social media is the biggest illusion I've ever seen. And so these people post things and they feel like they've done something, when all the people that did was click buttons. Think about that. Yeah, their thoughts got across because of those clicked buttons, but you're basing your justification of I've done something good for the civil rights movement from my social media post that all I did was click a few buttons in a certain order and get my point across, and now I've done it. I'm not out in the streets. I'm not out there trying to make it. I'm not coming up with conclusions that can better this situation.
No, all they say is that it brings awareness.
I'm just gonna tweet about it.
But how does it actually bring awareness? Like, unless you're living in Iraq, everyone knows about this. Like, you can't unsee it and not see it.
Well, yeah. I totally get that too, man. And it's like, well, yeah, who are you bringing awareness to? Are you bringing awareness to your 5,000 cap Facebook friends? Or now if you have let's say you have 500,000 followers on Instagram, and you're bringing, that's still a small percentage of a nation that's crumbling right now internally. So yeah, you reached 500,000 people with your post. That's not even a dent. We're never going to solve this shit over social media. And this is the unpopular opinion, for some odd reason on social media or just anywhere that there's a public chat forum, you cannot fight racism with racism. You can't fight fire with fire. You'll breed more fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and so you're trying to combat racism with more racism. I watched a video today, Rochester, New York, and I'm sure you've seen this go around the interwebs, but there's 4 black men that beat the living shit out of a small, and I mean small, white woman trying to protect her business. She never laid a hand on them. She didn't do anything, and this woman got savagely beaten with 2x4s, bro. Rochester, New York. You think that is going to help anything? And you think this is now what you've done? You think this is what's going to get you over George Floyd, is beating some innocent white woman down that had nothing to do with that fucking cop, had nothing to do with anything, and you're going to beat her with a 2x4 while her husband or her son's coming out there to try to defend his mom when she's getting blasted in the head with wood with 2x4s? Dude, it was disgusting to watch. So it's like, this is how I get you're angry, but so now you want to shed innocent blood in order for you to feel better? You're no better than that cop out there. You're no better than that cop that murdered George Floyd. You're even worse, because now that cop, he put his neck on his head, but you're going to hit this woman, or you're going to beat mercilessly this guy in Dallas that died in the hospital. Oh, I mean, and who knows if he died, right? Mainstream media, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
But the video
and I
was
definitely get
horrifying
that.
to
So
watch.
before we switch
you know?
kind of directions, I want to read you something that I read, I think today or yesterday, that I think is going to be very, hopefully it'll open, some people's eyes on, don't just keep saying, well, I don't see race, and I don't get, why you're so angry or anything like that. Let me read you this. So this is from a page that I follow. It's called Fatherly, and they're all things, dad related. And the guy that's posting this, he's a black guy, and he says, "Our kids are friends, and I'd like to be friends too. Let's clear up a few things." And he goes on to say, "If you want to be my friend, you have to acknowledge that my blackness matters and respect that it matters to my kid as well. While you may want to overlook the color of our skin, understand how our ethnicity and heritage has contributed to the content of our character. If you want to be my friend, you have to be willing to acknowledge that my blackness and understand that's what makes me and my children different, but it's also what makes us special." And I think that alone should open up a lot of people's eyes. It's like, black people are not asking you to not see race or just see them. They're asking you to realize, like, hey, at the end of the day, what makes us different also makes us unique. The color of my skin, I shouldn't be treated any differently, but understand that it also makes me a little bit different. You have to understand of, their heritage, of, how hard it took for, that group of people to get in a better place, to overthrow all those horrible, Jim Crow laws, and change a lot of people's viewpoint that, hey, they're not lesser than, anyone else. And I think that when you start to understand, like, hey, this is something that they honestly still go through, a small part of it, maybe not on a daily basis, maybe not on a weekly, but maybe it's happened something, every so often, something that prevented them from getting somewhere, or they were wrongly, thought of in a certain way. I think the moment that you start understanding, like, hey, this is something, important that I don't ever have to go through, even as a biracial guy, I don't experience the same things that, an African American will. I don't experience probably the same things that my neighbor goes through. And I think once you take that out of the equation and understand that that's where they come from, they're just asking you to see it and to recognize it. I think that will change your viewpoint on a lot more things.
And why is that so hard with certain people? When did we get to the point that we just accept one thing and we're just like, well, that's the way it is? It's like, no, this is America. We have the right to protest. We have the right to free speech, and we can speak up. I mean, other communist countries don't have that luxury. So when did we get to the point where we're like, well, it interferes with my comfortable life, so I'm just going to stay out of this one? You're literally, at this point, you're part of the problem. Yeah. Silence is not the answer, but neither is looting and burning down local businesses. That's never going to get your point across. All that is inciting way more anger. And we get that you're angry, and we get that other people that now weren't even affected, that didn't even have anything to do with these cops throughout history, didn't have anything to do with these wrongful murders or the oppression that African Americans people are experiencing in this nation. And now innocent people are being have absolutely been affected by this. And it's like, okay, so when did we get to the point where that was okay too? So, okay, you're doing this. It just doesn't look good. So the way I see it is, you're like, okay, since you've wronged me, and rightfully so, been wronged, I'm going to take it out on innocent people now. That's like a sociopathic way to think about it. That's a sociopathic way to do it. You're like, I'm going to, like this person over here that didn't do anything to me. Their business didn't do anything to me. All they're doing is saying, get away from my place. I've worked my whole life for this. Mind you, once again, there was a pandemic before this where how many people lost their businesses? So now they didn't only have to fight financial loss. Now they're having to fight physical damage. So they're like, okay, I made it through the pandemic. But now my shop's being burned down. Like, holy crap, man. These people have had to go through so much. I'm not
exactly sure if ever, I think, okay. So the protest started happening in Minneapolis, started happening in a bunch of other cities, including, here in Texas, like in Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, a bunch of other places. The protests started, innocent enough. I think they had great intentions. I think that's a great thing that they were out there. It's their right, and I don't think you should say any otherwise. I don't think they all expected that it was going to turn as violent as it did. Because if you notice, and this is just from a social media standpoint, as soon as the protest started happening, see everyone come to everyone's aid, like, oh, this is so great, stand with us, justice for Floyd. And then it started getting violent. And the first night, I don't remember exactly what day it was, it got to the point where everyone started looting. They started burning down businesses. They started beating up people. And then after the aftermath, you come to find out this wasn't just something where they're just fighting the establishment. There were a lot of businesses, especially up north, in Minneapolis, where George was killed, that were a lot of Black-owned businesses. There was one where this guy, he had put his entire life savings into this bar, and it had gotten destroyed. And this dude, I mean, I think there is a video of it online. I watched it, and it was so sad to watch because he's asking all his entire community, everyone around, because they're just picking up or they're still leftover looting. He's like, why'd you do this? How does this help anyone? And it's like...
Oh, is that from the Rodney King riots in 92?
No. This is something different. There was another one. I'm hoping so. I could be 100% wrong. I'm not sure. I need to look again. But anyway, the point is, like, so someone raised a GoFundMe, and they raised like 3 times over what he needed to start his business over. Same thing happened here in Dallas. When the riots started happening, they crushed and destroyed this other business that was another Black-owned business. And I think that people just started, whatever the reason why it started turning violent, conspiracy or not. I think that once that spark went off, I think like you said earlier, people have just been pissed off for so long that was just the spark. They didn't care who the business was owned by. They didn't care about anything. They just wanted to start shit. They wanted to break everything down. And yes, there are going to be some people that they see an opportunity to start looting, start taking things for themselves. I mean, did you see some of the pictures that people came out with? I mean, you had people coming out with, Fruit Loops, yeah, or Captain Crunch, clothes, TV.
Captain Crunch.
Someone was pushing this brand new baby stroller. And I'm like, okay, I get that. If I was looting, I'd probably be taking that too because I've got a kid coming in later this fall. But it's like,
well, think about it too. So we see all of these businesses getting bashed in. We see Target. Target's been, no pun intended, a main target in these, and they're being ransacked, and people are looting in there. But this is, again, like, dude, if I'm pissed off at anybody over this, I'll be the first vocal person to say I hate mainstream media because the way that they display information. So we see all of these riots going around, but you have to source sub articles, you have to source personal Facebook feeds to find the good in all this shit. And what I've seen is communities coming around,
100%.
Black,
I was just
Hispanic,
wanting to get to that too.
White, and they're coming around and they're helping out, and these people are doing GoFundMe's, but still, even with the GoFundMe's for specific people, there's still people out there, and like a gentleman, well, who knows if he was a gentleman, let's just say a white dude that had a machete outside of his business gets beat, and I've read articles that said he died, and I've read articles that say he's fine and making statements. It's like, okay, this shit is out of control as far as journalistic integrity. Journalists should be held to the highest degree right now of their corruption, because you are clearly putting out false information, and somebody's right out there, because there's 15 different spins on one story.
And let's get this straight. This is on both sides. This is not just a left or a right side. Both of y'all are acting up, and it's getting out of control.
Yeah, you're not helping a damn thing. It's every day. It's one step forward and two steps back every day, and we're gonna fall off that cliff from backtracking. And we are this close away from some bad shit like martial law, or I mean, dude, the fact that the Coast Guard now is been deployed, and you have the U.S. military in Minneapolis that's camped out on the roads. Like, I've seen pictures of them just getting sleep because they're up, for big long duty shifts and stuff. And dude, it's like, this is like, literally, how bad do you want it to get? Because we get that you're mad, we get it, but you're doing it about the wrong way. Fighting racism with riots, fighting fire with negative energy, fighting anything that you're wanting to corrupt, and the only way that you want to bring it down is through destruction and bloodshed. We're not in Viking times anymore, where this is not Rome.
No, it's not. But like, then this is not the way to do it. Opposing viewpoint, and I'll be the devil's advocate for them, because their question is, well, what can we do to actually make a change? Because I think,
boom, right there.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, well, maybe this will do something else. I don't think it will. I think that I think it was beautiful that people came together to protest, because I saw pictures in Fort Worth of them marching on the bridge before they got dispersed, and that's a whole situation altogether. But I saw people of all races and backgrounds, coming together to protest this, which is great. And I think that I'm hoping that they continue to do it. I hope they don't continue to riot and loot, because that's not going to solve anything. I know people are saying, oh, it's just brick and mortar, they've got insurance. Listen, you've never owned a business if that's what you're saying. Not all businesses, especially small ones, have insurance like that. And even then, sometimes it only covers up to a certain amount of damage. So let's say like your policy is, you have to reach $100,000 worth of damage before they'll give you, money. That means if, let's say you had, $87,000 worth of damage, you have to figure out a way to, pull that out of your pocket. And with all the COVID stuff going on, if you've already been losing money, then you're already going to be down in a hole. And then you you wake up this next morning, you go to work, and you see your entire shop destroyed. And you don't have $100,000, and that the banks are not necessarily, going to help everyone out because of XYZ. Then guess what? You've got to close down business. And now the people that have rioted and done stuff like this, you just hurt your community. The people that you want to stand with you, there will be a little less likely. I'm not saying they're right, but they're going to be a little less likely to do that because, someone was a cause of, now they've got to figure out, can I find another job to pay for my family, to put groceries on the table?
It's been such a very bad turn of events in just the past 3 months for anybody that owns a local business, in the hospitality industry alone, but just a local business in a major city. I mean, you had the pandemic and now this. It's like, dude, how does this economy get back on its feet to start? But how do people go on from here? Because obviously there's going to be a new normal because of the pandemic. And now there's even more of a new normal because things like this can happen overnight. because of something you can't control, because of some shitty ass cop out there that you've never met, that you don't know what he's doing. And this can all happen again tomorrow because, like, so all it takes is somebody to have to film it. And it's not bad that the person's filming it by any means, but your business in a major city is now susceptible to everything going on outside of your state that you don't have any power over dictating. I mean, it's a scary thought.
I mean, and not only that, it's just starting to get dangerous for anyone out there. I mean, I think that people didn't realize that, especially when it did start getting violent, because I don't think they thought it would. They started seeing a lot of the damage, not just to buildings and stuff like that, but also to human life. I mean, there was a lot of cases that I hope were true. It seemed like it, through the pictures and video, people just getting beat up no matter what color they were. Trying to protect their business, they were getting beat up and stuff like that. I saw a video where this protest or riot held up this highway, and you had cars just stuck there, couldn't go anywhere, and you had all these people just taking metal pieces of iron and just smacking the crap out of windows just to cause ruckus. And it's like, especially in certain states, if this gets a lot more dangerous, people are going to start responding, whether they're right or wrong. They're going to. I mean, it's the point now where I've told Becca, it's like, hey, you need to be a little more careful when you go out, because if you get stuck in a riot and something happens, you need to be prepared to do whatever you have to do to protect you and Atticus. And it's like, that's the thing that people don't realize. It's going to escalate if it keeps going like this. And I'm really hoping it doesn't, because like you say, they could bring in the militarize everything, but also just it's going to start becoming civilian upon civilian violence, and that's not going to help anything. It's just going to cause more loss of human life, which is what we're trying to prevent in the first place. That's the most precious thing on earth right now. We're trying to prevent another human losing their life, whether they are a good or a bad person.
And if you think protesting in the middle of a highway is the best route you can go to get your point across, you are sadly mistaken. You think beating the crap out of cars that are stuck on the highway that don't know where to go because obviously you're stopped for something that's not natural traffic, and now your car's getting beat to shreds and your windows being broken, and you think that is going to get your point across. I have no sympathy for anybody that's getting mowed over with that, because I've seen people going to cars, bashing them with kids inside them. And if I'm a parent, which I'm not, but I can imagine, because dude, if my cat was in that car, I'm going to mow your ass down, because you have now put my family's life in jeopardy. If my wife is in that car, God forbid, you better hope she's not, and you start bashing my car is 2 tons of steel. Which one do you think is going to win? And so it's like this, it's the dumbest protest tactic ever. It's like, we're going to hold up traffic with basically huge metal missiles, and we're just going to use our bodies to stop them, and that'll do it because they'll stop, right? Well, as we have seen, I just watched a dude get drugged about a mile down the road from a FedEx 18-wheeler. They're going up to 18-wheelers and scaring the driver. And you think your life is going to be okay? You think this is the right way to do it? You're going to this FedEx driver or this random family in a car that you're bashing the windows out of that has nothing to do with anything. You think that's going to get the point across? The blood of innocence. You think that's going to work? No. That is not the way to do it. Racism versus racism, or just negative energy fighting fire, or fire fighting fire. It's never going to happen. All it does, if you try to put out a fire with a blowtorch, what are you going to do? You're going to cause more destruction. You're going to spread that fire because you're adding to it. It's exactly what you guys are doing when you're protesting in the streets like this, when you're looting businesses, when you're smashing down and burning down stuff. Yes, we get it. You're angry. But this way to go about it only makes it worse. So like I said, 1 step forward, 2 steps, if not 3 steps back.
I mean, I hope that the protests, at the end of the day, even if you are protesting and if you stop a highway, I don't think it's a great thing. I think the only thing it really does is put some media coverage that you did that and why you did it. But still, it's it's just going to get a lot more dangerous, because especially, I mean, look, gun laws, and there's only a few amount of states in the U.S. where it's really strict. Especially here, we have a huge amount of CHLs where we have a concealed carry license. If you start keeping, doing that up, you're not going to get 10 feet within that car, because if that person happens to think you're about to, infringe on their family and you're coming at them with a tire iron, he's probably going to drop you. And then it just incites a whole new set of parameters to people, argue about with, shootings, with gun control and stuff like that. And it's like, especially here in Texas, that's why I really want to know what incited everyone to suddenly start, rioting and looting. And that's something that I think we both should kind of look into this week for next week, just kind of talk about, because there's a lot of conspiracies going on and it's not a solid thing. But, and here's to kind of change the mood just a little bit. I am still seeing a good amount of positivity come out of this. I've seen so many posts and pictures and videos of people from opposing races, even with the protests and stuff, of people just getting along and, people understanding like, hey, we understand why you're doing this and we're with you. We stand with you. Like, we're not all bad.
But not to cut you off. You're having to dig to find the good news, aren't you?
I'm not relying on news. I'm relying on people that I know, people that I happen to be, friends with, that they're maybe reposting something that someone, took a picture of while down there. I am not relying on the left or the right, any type of news outlet, because guarantee you, if you go on, let's say, to Fox News, you're going to see one iteration of maybe something slightly good, and then you go to, let's say, like CNN, and you're going to see something and it's totally opposite, polarizing. So that is the wrong place to get your news.
Imagine this. Yeah, imagine this. That's what I meant, is like you're having to dig through your friends on social media that, mind you, the rest of the world is not friends with, to find these good news sub-articles, right? And so imagine this. Imagine if all the mainstream news outlets, Fox News, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CNN, and etc., if they all started airing the good news, the good stuff, the community's coming through, that's it, right? But no, they don't want to do that. Why? Because no one gives a shit about that with ratings, and they are profitizing all of this stuff. This is why I brought up earlier the Covington kids. That is the news's favorite story. When they got their hands on this George Floyd footage, they were like, oh my God, we're gonna be rich. This is the best thing. We have to report this. We got to be the first ones to report this. Like, this news story goes live at 6. No matter what, cut the good story. Here we go. We got our news for the month. And it's like, dude, it's the worst. Like, media needs to be held so accountable. I mean, there's this, people want heads on pikes. Start with the journalists and media, because they are so out of hand right now. They have done so much damage before the George Floyd thing with the pandemic. All the misinformation out there, and you got people losing their minds because they don't know the answers. And now we can't even come to a proper conclusion on the autopsy report of George Floyd. We have TMZ reporting fentanyl, and we have and then we have other news source outlets reporting asphyxiation. So it's like, dude, y'all can't even get your shit together on this, and you want us to trust you with the pandemic that almost tanked, if not tanked, our economy, and people were laid off, and businesses closed down, and now businesses burned down, and we still can't find rightful information on this? Dude, it's the saddest thing in the world, and all this does is make people put their own trust, their own justice in their hands, because they don't trust anybody out there, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
I mean, please, anybody listen to this, change my mind. You know?
I mean, I agree with that. I think that we're finally at a point now, it seems like, and this is just my opinion, that we are starting to take things for what it is. And what I mean by that is a lot of the sentiment, or at least I feel like, when, this story first came out, was it was more of the loss of a human life. That you see that poor guy on the ground, you see that officer's neck, or his leg on top of his neck, and you just think about, like, anyone in that situation would not be doing well, and they're probably going to die from that. And then you find out how long it happened. Like, I think he was still on his neck like 3 minutes supposedly after he died. And it's just, and makes you sad. And then yeah, all the other details start coming on. And he's a black guy. It's a white officer, and all sorts of other things. I think that I'm really hoping that this just opens a lot of people's eyes. Like, hey, if you want to be more active, yeah, go ahead and protest. I hope that makes a difference. But do the things that actually make a change. One, be better for
Well,
people,
so it's like
and then like start making real changes.
oh
Like
yeah, I mean
start a
that needs to
petition
be.
and start contacting your local representative, your congressman, your senator. Hell, man, if you need to send letters by the truckload to the White House. Make Trump see what he needs to make changes to. Maybe he needs to stop. This is gonna go on a rant, but maybe he needs to stop tweeting so much and actually start like doing some audits. If he keeps trying to say that this is a business and that's how he needs to run it, then bro, you need to do a lot of deep audits, starting with the justice system, because this is not going to be an isolated incident. It's not going to be the only one. And if you want people to have faith, not only like in their neighbor, but in the cops that everyone says that, oh, well, there's a lot of good ones. Well, we need to see more of that, because all we see are people hiding stuff, and all these little conspiracies coming out of people hiding this, people saying this and that. Oh, it's not this guy, it's not that. That's not the real reason why this happened. We've got to figure out a way to get past that.
Yeah, and it all starts with the gatekeepers of information. So the ones that have the platforms, mainstream media, to air this information out to you, they get to pick and choose what stories you get. And that's the worst part of it, is because how many other ethnicities, how many white people have been murdered by black people? There's so many of that. How many Mexican people have been murdered by white people? How many, and vice versa, how many white people have been murdered by Mexican people? How many Asian people have murdered Mexican people? How many white people have murdered Asian people? How many Asian people have murdered white people? But it happens all the time. It's not right. It doesn't make it okay. But we get the gatekeepers facilitating information to us, and they get to pick and choose which ones. And their favorite one to run is Whitey. Whitey killed this guy, and so now we're going to run this because that's our best rating, and we need ratings because that's how we make profit. And dude, it's so bad, man. And like the gatekeepers on this, there's been so many people posting, and maybe it's their white guilt, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, but there's been so many people posting like, oh, well, no one was outraged when so-and-so got killed by so-and-so. Where's the outrage and riots for that? And you're right. No one protested, right? Because it wasn't glorified.
But here's the thing:
like
guarantee that person who said that didn't do anything when that actual incident happened. That's what pisses me off. You want to say, oh, well, you didn't do anything when this person died. Like, well, did you? I bet you just researched right then and there to show, oh, well, they didn't do it when this thing happened. Guaranteed probably someone did. Maybe not someone in your circle. But if you saw it and you didn't do anything, you're just as guilty.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's completely possible that they just found out about this story because it was suppressed. And dude, we all heard about the George Floyd story in a matter of seconds, So it's like there's gatekeepers with information. So I'm not saying this person, they're actually both right. It's like, okay, yeah, there should have been outrage over that because it's still a murder and it wasn't okay that happened. But for you to post it as retaliation for what's going on right now, it's wrong too. So it's like both sides are wrong and both sides are right. And so, but what it comes down to is the gatekeepers of information and how they're facilitating it. And then they got their asses sued hardcore over the Covington kids. And that kid walked away and pocketed over 200 mil plus because he sued him. But everyone just accepted it. Where was the outrage, right? And so it's like, okay, well, we clearly have a media problem here that loves to do nothing but divide, get numbers, and say, screw the rest of the world. Not my problem while I'm sitting here in this suit and making my millions or making how much ever I'm making because, like I'm here in the office. They're out there in the real world. We just report what they're doing. It's so bad, dude. And we've made this a platform that glorifies this. Like people should be so outraged over media right now. Fuck all media. If you're mainstream, if you're doing this, if you're airing stuff just for ratings out there, you have no integrity and your head should be on a pike just as much as that cop that killed George Floyd.
Yeah. No, I definitely can
That's
see
my
that.
opinion.
I was going to say something else, and now I totally blanked on it. But so here's two, because I know we've got some other things that we want to talk about before we end these 2 hours. I personally think that I really hope that if they continue to protest, I think that's great. I hope that it brings a lot more awareness to leaders to actually step up and make a change and stop doing the same things they have been. Like maybe some of these representatives need to say, hey, you know what? This is a real thing that maybe we actually should take a closer look at. Let's go ahead and have a meeting with the rest of our, peers and see what we can do. I really hope that the looting and rioting stops, because I don't think it's going to lead to anything good later on the line. And I know people might disagree with me, but if you got some points, send them my way. I'd love to chat, but I really just don't see how it's going to help things at this day and age, especially when you see so much damage.
And dude, I just saw an update.
For what?
I just saw an update that came out. It's George Floyd's brother coming out publicly saying, "Stop the rioting. This is not going to bring my brother back." Like, dude, he said it perfectly right there. That's his own brother saying that.
No.
And so I think what we can chalk the riots and the looting up to is honestly weekend warriors, man. There's a lot of people that just wanted to be out because they've been in the houses for so long, and then they got that little anarchy bug in them. They're like, you mean we can go around and all this anger that we've held in because of this pandemic and jobs lost and everything, we can just go out and smash windows and not get in trouble and actually be outside and hang out with my buddies. So, I'm heading downtown. Yeah, I guarantee you there's people just like that. But not all people, but there's some.
Here, I believe this. If you actually want to make a change and you don't want to just say another post, I think there's a couple of things just personally that I think you can do. I think it's great if you want to contribute to, there's a bunch of petitions, or not petitions, sorry, campaigns for, changing how cops are operating in the U.S. I forget the exact one, but I will find it and I will try to put it on our page. There's a lot of campaigns to pay the protesters to bail them out of jail. Those are a little subjective, just because I don't know how they actually tell who was in there and who's in there for looting and maybe beating the crap out of some guy. But here's the thing. Take this away from this. Don't just post about stuff. Actually do something. Be better. Be a better human. If you want to speak up, that's great. I hope that helps. But you need to get off your butt and do something. Send an email, write a letter to your local representative. Be nicer to the person across the street who maybe that's something that they experience. Write to your police commissioners like, hey, dude, you need to change some stuff up, add some training or whatever it is, because this is not going to be the last time this happens. Flood President Trump's, inbox with a bunch of mail. Create a petition. Create an organization that, helps people get out of messes like this, so that they're not having to, be in a situation where they're in a wrong part of town and they get accidentally, blamed for something that wasn't their fault. Actually make a change. I mean, I'm definitely, after this situation, I'm going to take a good long look and hey, what can I do to actually contribute, rather than either just being silent, on social media, or just posting on social media, or whatever it is. How can I as a human do better and be better, not only just for, my fellow humans, but, so that stuff like this hopefully doesn't continue to happen in the future. So that's how I'm going to leave this segment like this.
Yeah.
For my thing. If you want to say anything, go for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, mine is a short and simple message. I think we've said enough on this. But what I think, man, is just love overrides all. And that's the last thing a lot of angry people want to hear. They don't want to hear that, because it's so much harder to love somebody than hate somebody. Trust me, it really is. And so it's so easy to go out and just be angry. But it's really hard to love somebody. And I think at this point, we need to put all of our differences aside. I mean, we talked about this earlier. This has been the civil rights movement since MLK all the way up to present day. We need to get a hold on this. And the only way to do it is not by going to war, not by martial law happening, not by rubber bullets getting shot in people's eyes to where they go blind. The only way we can do this is to love each other and put these stupid differences that are literally face value, finally put them to rest. And it's as simple as a smile. It's as simple as a handshake. It's as simple as getting back out there and being a community. And in your community, I mean, Texas, you don't got to go, if you're in Texas, you don't got to go all the way up to Minneapolis and love on those people. I mean, you can, but they need their community and you need your community. This can all happen at a local level. It doesn't have to be national. And we can do this as people. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to hate this person and I'm going to go yell at them and scream at them, and literally nothing comes about it except more anger, and then the problem worsens. Or you can go to this, hey, I'm going to put my differences aside with this person and I'm going to love them. And whatever they said, I don't hold it accountable. Because you know what, we're going for progress here. And Frederick Douglass said it the best: without struggle, there is no progress. And we're struggling right now, so let's make progress. Let's not continue to struggle as a nation, and stop seeing black, white, red, blue, and start seeing humans. Literally, it's a message that has been preached for God knows how long, but it is time to start practicing the basics here and stop this shit before it consumes us all. Yeah, that's exactly all I gotta say.
Back to the fundamentals. Let's start doing it.
Back to the fundamentals. If we can all master the basics, the shit we were taught in kindergarten, man, like, dude, we can do this. Like, I just worked out with an African-American man today, and me and him didn't hate each other. Me and him talked openly about this, and he's my friend. You know? And it's like, were we always friends? No, I just met him today, and he's super cool. And he didn't hate me right when he walked in, and I didn't hate him right when I walked in. But we saw each other. He needed a spot, and we worked out, and we conversated, and dude's a cool guy. It's as simple as that. You walk in, and you literally, like, that's why people say you speak it into life, right? If you already have in your mind a predetermined notion of somebody, you literally have painted yourself in a corner. And now you have made them have to prove you wrong for something that they didn't even do, for something that doesn't even exist. It just exists in your head. But if you go in there with a smile and just open and start loving people and stop looking at, like the pandemic, stop looking at people like threats, stop judging people off of their images and the clothes they wear or how they look and the car they drive, this world will be so much better.
Yeah.
And rank.
I agree. I think the biggest thing too is, like, just, you know, like you say, you know, love people and take the time to listen. Sometimes that goes longer than most people think. So, but we've talked about this. I'm sure we'll talk about it some next week if any updates happen. You know, I hope you guys are, you know, good with listening to us talk about this for a whole hour. We've definitely covered a good myriad of the subject, but I think it's time now for Pat and I, you and I, we need to do our Real Talk Homie segment. So let's get into it. What you got for us this week?
Do you want to start? You want me to start?
Yeah, you go ahead and, you know what? I'll go and do mine because mine's pretty short. I've just been, you know what pisses me off right now is I've seen so much divide, and you either have someone, it's because it really has to do with this thing, because, you know, we had the Atlanta, you know, killing a couple weeks ago, and then we had the one here in Minneapolis with George, and I have seen so many different viewpoints, and people have, again, you know, like you and I have talked about, we started this podcast because we wanted to be able to talk about different viewpoints and still, hopefully, at the end of the day, be able to agree to disagree on things. You know, we're always going to be the guilty party in that aspect. And I've seen so many people that if you say something that is slightly offensive, not offensive, just disagreeing with how they view the situation, especially these last two, you know, large media intensive incidents, then you're just automatically going to get deleted, removed, or not associated with. Not to say there's not any, you know, asshole guys or people that are racist, or they feel like, oh, you know, someone had a comment or whatever it is. Those people, yeah, you don't need to have negative people like that in your life. But just because someone has a different opposing viewpoints and you think that you're 100%, right in that situation and that's how you choose to handle things, it doesn't still say a lot of good things about us as humans. We're still the same people that if you disagree, 100 years ago, well, we're going to go to war. Let's go. And it seems like it's not any different nowadays where you disagree with someone, well, we're going to go to war and I'm not going to associate with you anymore because you think a certain way. The question we should be asking, when we see a different viewpoint on, does Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter or all those different phrases that we have right now is, why do you feel that way? What experiences led you to associate with that phrase or that belief? I've seen so many people post, Black Lives Matter, and then someone in the comments will say, well, all lives matter. And I'm like, I get it, but I don't. Like, why? What is it? Of course, all lives matter. Like, that should be a given. If you don't think that, then you don't believe in human life. So if that's how you feel about stuff, then you're an idiot. And I know that it's kind of contradicted to what I'm saying, but it's like, you're not asking someone like, hey, why do you feel that way? And I think we've seen that a lot over the last few years. That sentiment of, well, if anyone responds with, Black Lives Matter, and then I'll say, all lives matter. We definitely saw that here in DFW. I don't remember if you remember or even if you knew about it. There was a black guy that he was in his apartment in Dallas. And this cop had just gotten off duty. She was a white lady. And she accidentally walked into the wrong apartment. Didn't notice things, saw that guy in there, assumed he was there to do some bad things, and shot and killed him. And she was a police. Yeah. Did you not hear about this? Yeah. This happened. She just got a.
I did not.
Sentenced, I think 6 months ago, maybe a year ago. Anyway, this happened the last couple of years. And the sentiment that came out of that was like, Black Lives Matter, like he shouldn't have had to die, which there is no way he shouldn't have. I mean, there's no way he should have. She should have way more awareness. It doesn't matter like how tired you are. Like if that's the first thing you want to do, then you need to be taken away from that position. You have no business handling a gun and being in a place of position. But when that incident happened, everyone's sentiment was, Black Lives Matter. And then you had the opposing viewpoint, which some of them were, large supporters of, cops and military and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, well, all lives matter. Blue lives matter. I'm like, I get it, but I don't, because it wasn't a white guy that died. It wasn't a minority or it wasn't anyone else. This black guy was in his home, supposedly safe. And I guarantee you, if it would have been, some white dude, I don't think it would have been the same thing. I don't. Just based on, life in general, how things are, especially here, up north. And so again, you've got people on both sides that they cannot figure out how the hell to just have a conversation. All they want to do is keep spatting that back and forth. Why is it so hard for people to just sit down and say, hey, why do you feel about the way? Let me tell you of why I feel this way and what led me to this. So you can see why I'm so pissed off, why I'm yelling, in an interview on the news. Or I've got a horn where I'm yelling through a protest because of something that happened. And you're like in your car or safe at home, like, oh, well, he's just acting out. That person is just upset. They've got no basis because they're doing X, Y, Z. So if you do it that way, it doesn't matter. Why don't you just take the time to just sit down and listen? Or ask the person, why do you feel that way? What makes you tick the way that you tick? And why do I tick the way that I tick? And I feel so strongly about this that I'm refusing to see another person's view. No one is saying that all lives don't matter. No one is saying that blue lives don't matter, like a police officer's life doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they're still a human no matter what color they are. But you have to be willing to not shut someone's down just because you think that they're being ridiculous. We see too much of that, and it's not helping anything. I know everyone's like, well, if a white person dies, we can't say white lives matter. I disagree. I'm gonna take a viewpoint like, hey, if we started seeing things where white people were dying, like flies, like we're seeing right now, it seems like with a lot of African Americans, and they're being killed by African, American police or Asian or whatever the hell skin color they are, it would make sense because it's not, any other skin color that's dying. It would be white. And so when you say like, hey, all lives matter, I still think that you're not recognizing the issue for what it is. You just want to say that so that way you come out on the right. You come out on top. And I think that's got to stop. You don't always have to be coming out on top. You don't always have to be right so that everyone can see it. It does a lot more to sit down with someone and say, hey, why do you feel this way? And maybe I can help you see my viewpoint, or maybe I'm going to stand with you. Maybe not the way that you want it, but I will stand with you to support you in your cause. And we've been seeing that so much, and it irritates me that people can't be adults and just sit down and talk about stuff. It's just one of those, like, you've got to figure out like when you're going to be an adult and start talking with people. I mean, like you said, you were just working out at the gym and you just started talking to someone. I'm sure deep down there are several things that he probably didn't agree with, or he had a sentiment on that maybe you probably wouldn't if it was discussed. But it seemed like you guys were able to at least, agree to disagree if that was the case. So my real talk, homie, is be better. Be willing to listen to someone and talk with someone. Don't just spout off just for the sake of it. If that's the case, just don't say anything at all. Which I know everyone is like, oh, well, you need to stop being silent. Sometimes, if you don't have anything constructive to say that's actually going to contribute to the positive outcome of that situation, you need to just close your mouth. You don't need to be saying anything. Because all you want to do is say the same thing you've been saying for years, and it's not helping anyone. It's not making any changes. If you're a believer, a Christian, and you want to actually make a difference, do what Jesus did. He went out and he was with people. Someone said today that I was a perfect, example is when Jesus died, he died with thieves and sinners. He didn't die with nice people. He wasn't crucified next to some, person, whatever it is. He was next to the worst of the worst. He was willing to talk with them in his last words and say, hey, I will remember you. That I think that prisoner said, remember, be something along those lines. He was out with the people. He wasn't just talking. Yeah, he talked a lot. He had a lot of sermons on the Mount, but he was actually most of the time out there with people doing things and not just saying, yeah, I'm sure he wasn't saying like all lives matter. He was saying, hey, your life matters to me. Your life matters that much that I died on the cross for your sins. And it didn't matter what color, what background that you came from. So that's my real talk, homie, for this segment.
Damn, bro. That was some heartfelt. That was really heartfelt, man. How the hell do I even follow that? Like, that was, you said it perfect. That was great. I don't even want to follow up with that. All I can say is mic drop, bro. Like, I'm proud of you for that. That was very thought out. I don't agree with any of it. No, I'm just kidding. I totally love it, man. I think that was great. I was just going to bitch about some shit that was like, somebody said something mean to me on Facebook. So I'm just kidding.
You know what? I'll tell you what. Next episode, we need to have a little more lighthearted. So I'm hoping that World War III doesn't happen, because I feel like the meme is like every month, what is going to happen?
Yeah, I guess all I can say is the future is unpredictable, because no one saw this coming with the riots and the George Floyd stuff. But man, I think you said it perfectly, dude. I love everything you said. It resonates with me, and I hope it resonates with the listener. And yeah, man, it's why we did this podcast, is because, you know what, we're going to talk about the hard issues, and we're not going to veer away from them. And what we're going through in this world right now it's not fun. It's not a good time right now. And so, some of our podcasts will, they'll kind of resonate the energy that's going on in the world. But In later podcasts, well, hopefully there's some better stuff to talk about. Just right now, it's a heavy situation, and our nation is crumbling internally, and this world needs love, and this world needs Jesus, and yeah, dude, I love everything you said, man. I think I really would like to end it on that note because I don't even want to follow that, bro.
Well, I appreciate that. So, yeah, I just want to say, like, if you want us to like do more news stories and kind of break them down, give the details, the facts, and then our views on them, let us know. That's something I was kind of thinking about this week. But yeah, again, I understand you wanting to end it like this because it's a tough thing to talk about. But it had to be said. It had to be said.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just want to reiterate, man, just we all need to be there for each other during these times, and the last thing we need to do is, one, spill the blood of innocence, but spill any more blood that's already been spilled and burn anything down that's, we don't need to do that anymore. What we need to do is find a way to fix this and then move on, because we have other shit to tackle in this world. We still have a pandemic. We still don't know where the origins of that came, but that hopefully that truth comes out, and we'll still have future battles in this world. And if we can't make it through this one, it's unfortunate what happened, but we can't change a thing about it. And so if we can't make it through this, we're never going to make it through all the tribulations that come in the future. So love your neighbor, turn off the damn news because they're evil, and get outside and make a difference in your community. That's it.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect way to end it. I agree with you on all of that.
And Micah, go ahead and tell them we really want to hear from you guys out there, bad or good. Bring it on. So Micah, tell them where to find us.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram, The Guilty Party Podcast. We're also on YouTube, The Guilty Party The Guilty Party Podcast. We're probably going to be moving to Facebook at some point. We're just trying to give, easier methods of communication for people to get a hold of us. Also, send us an email. Our email is wearetheguiltyparty at gmail.com. Again, like Pat said, we would love to hear from you, whether it's good or bad, whether it's positive or negative, if you like it, if you don't like it, whatever it is. We want to hear from you guys, and we really want to build this as a community for all of y'all, not just for the two of us, but you be a part of us as well.
And and I think we're getting ready to make it over to Apple Podcasts, which is cool. We have a new logo being made, and in the future we're going to have our first sponsor, which is already in the works, and we're starting to work things out. So yeah, we're loving doing this. We're loving bringing this content to you guys, and thank you for everybody that's listening now. We're not stopping anytime soon. So signing off. This is The Guilty Party. Thank you for being one of us through this podcast, and we'll see you here for episode 4.
All right, y'all take care. Bye.
See ya.